Well, sometimes I like to fly without landing gear. In fact, most of the time, because I fly around a lot of tall grass, but sometimes I do want landing gear, and then I'd have it. Actually, it takes off of grass a lot easier than I thought it would, as long as you let the tail come up first. Oh! Whoops! Not supposed to do that. But hey, as you can see, it comes off very nicely. No damage to the plane. Oh! There we go. Another nice thing about this removable landing gear is you can put it on different planes, same set of gear. This happens to be a slick, whereas before it was on the yak. I have my center of gravity here, and I'll mention this to new people if you're putting these on. You want them, this black mark right here is my center of gravity, and also that dot and that dot, okay? And so you want them a little bit forward of your center of gravity, and you don't want it too far forward, because then your tail just doesn't pick up easy enough. So just a little bit forward of center. And you can see here these are pretty big cracks in the asphalt. Now they've been sealed, but they're still pretty large, and these 1.5-inch wheels, diameter wheels, go over them pretty easily. Whoops. As soon as I say something, of course. Keep the tail down, you won't have that problem. Okay, now I'm going to intentionally strip off the landing gear to show you it doesn't damage the plane. Didn't look like they came all the way off, but that'll give you a good idea of what happens. They just hit the ground and slide right off. Pretty nice. Okay, I'm not going to go into an entire build video because I kind of timed it out a little bit. It's going to take about 20 or 25 minutes. And quite frankly, this is so easy a caveman could do it. So I'm going to give you the materials you're going to need, and I'm going to go through a brief tutorial on how to put it all together. And I think that's going to be sufficient for you, because I know you're smart people, and it's just, like I say, it's just not that difficult. First ingredient, binder clips. These are the 32mm size, which is about 1.25 inches lengthwise this way. They're $1 for 12 of them at Dollar Tree. So, you know, pick up a pack. They're cheap. You're going to need some music wire. 0.055 is what I used on my second set, and it's much more stable than the 0.047 wire I used on my first set. So get a length of the 0.055. You're going to need about a foot, 14 inches in that neighborhood, and this stuff is cheap at your local hobby shop, or radicalrc.com carries it for about 70 cents a stick. You're going to need something to make wheels, or you're going to need to buy wheels. I decided I had a scrap of EPP aileron left from a scrapped out plane, and I made this set of wheels out of EPP foam. It's very tough. I added some reinforcement plastic, which I'll get to in a second. If you do not have EPP foam, you could use some Dollar Tree foam with the paper removed. I think it's a little too flimsy by itself. You might want to double it up, but it is something you can experiment with. You are also going to need some hot glue, a little scrap of foam. This is my template that I use for a wheel. You can use an orange juice cap, a milk container cap, apple juice, whatever you want to use. Just depends on how big you want to make the wheel. You could use a quarter, you can use a nickel, you can use a dime. Depends on how small or large you want to make the wheels. Going to need a piece of plastic, and this is simply a Nancy's yogurt top. You could use a cottage cheese container top or a coffee can lid. It doesn't make any difference. This is just something that I use. I trace out the pattern of my wheel cover. Well, let's just go into the build. That's the materials you're going to need basically. So the way this goes is, I figured out that with this sandwiched onto the plane, pinched onto the plane, which changes the angle here, I wanted to flare this out a little bit, and I wound up ripping about a 15-degree angle here. Now, if you do not have a table saw and don't have the ability and the means to do that, don't worry, because all you have to do is take a sharp razor blade and make sure it's sharp, because this tends to want to tear and push through this if you don't have a sharp blade. And estimate yourself a 15-degree angle here, and then go straight down through it again, and there's your angle piece. And you can mess around with different angles, steeper angles if you want, and just play with it. Once you get that ripped, go ahead and take your quick grip and glue it onto the binder clip so the sharp point is up there, and just let those dry. Once those have dried, take about a 6 to 7 inch piece of your music wire, put an angled bend on it like this. Do not bend the bottom yet, because the angle that comes off is going to change. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So you want to stick that up into the little crook right up in here. There's a little fold, and what that does is it helps keep the wheel from rotating when you hit the ground a little hard. And I've had it happen where originally I had a straight piece on here and it just wiggled away. And this has been a lot stronger setup. So get that glued on there with your quick grip. Use a light amount of glue it'll set up a little quicker for you, and just run it along the metal here, up inside this little crook here and down here. Let that set up and dry. Keep manipulating it so it stays perpendicular or parallel to the wire on the clip, and let it dry real well. Do that to both sides. Once you have those glued on there, then you can make your outward bend and get your angle fit. You want it centered. You want it running perpendicular to the plane, your axle to be perpendicular from the plane and horizontal to the ground. Okay. Once you get that established and glued and this bent, now when you bend your axle, make sure you leave enough room for a dab of hot glue on the inside here and a dab of glue on the outside here. Those are going to be your wheel collars, and that's what's going to keep your wheel rolling true. And it's always better to err if you're going to use, I can't tell you a length because it depends on if you use 2 thicknesses of this, 1 thickness of this, okay? So that's how you get your struts. And for your wheels, okay, I have a little modification here for you. The first 2 sets worked pretty good, but I'm finding they're not quite as durable as I would like, because I do a lot of kind of stupid things, like running my plane around the ground like it's an RC car and making sharp turns, and also if I hit the ground a little too hard, or I've landed on a roof and one of the wheels popped off. So I went to putting quick grip on the end here, and I think I forgot to mention this before. This is great glue. You can use super glue or epoxy, but I think the super glue would be too brittle, quite frankly, up in these connections here. I've had no problems with this up in here whatsoever. It's solid. So what I decided to do, and I'm in the process of making another set right here, I am going to make the axle a little bit longer, and instead of using glue to hold on the wheel, I'm going to use some 3 30-second Dubrow wheel collars. They're going to add a little more weight, but the glue's got some weight to it. So I'm not really that concerned about it, because first of all, I'm not a professional high-performance pilot, and second of all, I just think it's a better way to hold the wheels on, and the weight just isn't that much of a big deal. And when I'm flying with these on, I'm pretty much just landing and taking off and doing different goofy things like landing on roofs. So I don't really care if there's a little extra weight. So leave your axles a little long. I'm going to be putting one on the inside here and one on the outside. And I think that's going to help a lot to keep things solid. That's it. Take the template you want to use, lay it down on the foam. I recommend a sharp twin-edged knife, twin-pointed. This is from a razor knife. And stab it into the EPP foam or whichever foam you're using. Hold down the cap. Again, you can use a quarter if you want. I find a stiff back reinforced single edge blade on a cap like this, it tends to tip the blade and give you an uneven edge and an uneven cut. If you're going to use a quarter or a nickel, that'll work fine. Stab that in, and while you're turning the foam and the cap, you are pushing with this hand straight in to keep it tight to the edge of the cap, and trying to keep it as straight up and down as you can during the entire process. And that's basically all there is to it. That's how you make your wheel. Now, for reinforcement for your wheel, simply take your cap again, trace it onto your plastic, and do that twice, one for each wheel, and then cut that in about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch so it doesn't come quite out to the perimeter there. You know, you can leave a little bit of room there. You see, that gives you a nice, see the white there and then the black, and it really doesn't make any difference what color you make them, just a matter of your personal preference. So you want to undersize this piece of plastic, and then on the inside I just made these any kind of shape I wanted, but you could use a dime to trace those out and cut those. And that does two things. The bigger piece out here reinforces your wheel and gives it some rigidity. And the inside one, and the other thing this does is it supports the foam. And because if you just have your axle going through there, it's going to eventually hog out that foam and make it real wiggly. And that's not going to be a good thing. So basically, it's giving you a nice strong wheel connection there. Take some of your EPP foam, glue your plastic piece on the outside, smoosh it in real good, let it dry. Do the same on the inside, same thing to both wheels. And you're almost done. At this point, you can go ahead and add some more glue up in this area and this area just to make it stronger. And then take a little dab of hot glue right in each corner. Do them one at a time, and make sure you leave enough room. I usually leave about eighth of an inch or so. That way it gives me a little wiggle room here, but not too much. And then another dab of hot glue on the outside. And before I put the hot glue on, I take my cutters and I score the outside of that just to rough it up to help keep that glue on. And then on the inside here, I use another touch of the quick grip because these wheels tend to, seems like there's a lot of force, inward force directed on these, and it wants to push the hot glue off. Okay, so pretty much done. One more thing. Now the length of your strut from this point to the bend is going to be dictated by two things. The height of, excuse me, the height of your wheel and the length of your prop. So for example, my planes that I'm running have a 9-inch prop. So I just went up to the plane and I kind of got an idea where it gave me about 1.5 inches of clearance from the bottom of the prop when I had the wheel set on, when the plane was running down the runway horizontally. And for my particular setup with 1.5 inch wheels, that's going to add me 3/4 of an inch right here to the height. And then my prop is going to run down to here. I've got a 9-inch prop on it. So I've got it all calculated out that for a 9-inch prop and an 1.5 inch wheel, If I come from right here at this point to this bend 4¼ inches, that's going to leave me plenty of clearance when I get this pinched on the plane and my tail's up and I'm running straight down the runway. So depending on what size you make your wheels and what size you're running as a prop, that can vary a little bit, and it's not super critical, with the exception that obviously you don't want your prop blasting into the asphalt or the concrete. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if I mentioned it already. Don't use quick grip glue on Dollar Tree foam, because as you can probably see right there, it'll just melt right through it and eat it up. Okay? So that's all there is to it. I hope you have fun. It's a fun little build, and it's a cheap little build for about 30-35 cents. If you make your own wheels, you can have a removable set of landing gear. So good luck to you.